Well, Jim, thanks for doing our inaugural pseudo podcast, whatever this is, chat about Foundry and AIP.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Do you mind stating your name and title for the record?
Yeah, I'm Jim. I'm a forward deployed engineer at Northslope.
Awesome. And you used to work at Palantir?
Yeah.
We used to work at Palantir together.
Yeah, I can give a quick, brief, intro on my Palantir experience. I worked at Palantir for 8.5 years. We had the opportunity to work together on one of my very first projects in Japan.
Yeah, that was one of mine too. Yeah,
that was one of your first. Yeah, and so I kind of had two different roles at Palantir. I started as a forward deployed engineer, so working closely with customers, customizing platform. We didn't really have Foundry back then, so there wasn't a platform to customize. It was a lot more fully custom development that we were doing for our customers. And I did that for 4.5 years. And then I spent the rest of my time in product as both an engineer as well as a lead, more in a leadership role. And I led and founded the Foundry ontology and objects team. That became one of the largest groups in Foundry. It might still be one of the largest groups, I'm not sure anymore. And then my last stint in Foundry was leading and building out the Foundry modeling team. So there was a couple adjacent products that were focused on modeling, but they weren't brought into the actual product team until kind of my last year at the company. And we kind of formalized that into a real product group and with a real product strategy and vision and kind of tech strategy. But I actually left right after that to go work for a startup.
In particular, maybe to start with, why Foundry for your startup?
Yeah, Foundry, one, I was just so familiar with the ins and outs of Foundry, right? I built a large part of the sort of operational part of Foundry, so the object system. And so I knew how I could wield it to solve the business problems that we had. So we were working in the healthcare context. And as you can imagine, I think the hospital business is huge for Palantir. It's a platform that's secure and HIPAA compliant, so you can do everything from a data perspective. It's actually quite challenging to find platforms that are HIPAA compliant, so that's a key feature that they had. And then being able to build all these operational workflows. It's just running a clinic or running sort of a healthcare company. There's just a lot of operational things that are challenging, and it's the right tool to build operational workflows for that. The other piece was that our platform, our company, was data focused. They wanted to build a data platform to change the sort of healthcare industry and the mental health industry. And so it felt like the right product to build on top of, right? To be able to leverage a lot of the power of the ontology, power of Foundry, to integrate all of this data and to make a difference in that industry. The last thing I'll say is, as a startup, you're like pretty strapped for resources.
Yeah, that's our story.
And if there's anything that can kind of accelerate that, it's like worth using and worth taking a bet on. And so there was a couple projects we were able to turn around in like a month for the clinicians, and they were extremely happy with the speed of delivery of that with only a couple engineers. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. From a product development perspective, like what is different about being in a product environment with Foundry if you're building a product company versus if you don't have it? Like, what were you able to do differently, or how'd you think differently about that?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that you can move faster around. So, there might be like some specific workflow where, traditionally you would have to set up the database. I'd have to set up, maybe it's a custom React app, or maybe you're using another application builder, low code, no code thing, and you're stitching all that together. But I could just, point and click with Workshop, define the ontology, integrate the data, and like quickly be able to build this one app. And it may be not just like building that one app. It's hard to justify building all of that. Maybe the value of that one specific workflow is low, but because it's leveraging the same data, the same ontology, it's like it compounds on itself. So even if like the incremental applications you're building over time is small, and each one of those is invaluable over, because you can do it so quickly and cheaply in Foundry, because you're using one system, it like kind of works, it makes sense.
Yeah.
The economics work out, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. How did it change how you thought about the skill sets you needed and like how big of a team you needed, things like that? Or did it not impact that at all?
It totally impacted that. I think to be honest, we struggled a little bit with this, where do we apply the full-on custom, we had an engineering team that was building actual fully custom software. So we had a custom backend, we had a custom React app, and we were doing all that. Delivery on that was much slower because it's all custom. And then for specific operational workflows, we were kind of building those in Foundry. And I forgot the specific question it was around.
How did it make you think about skill sets and how many people you needed, things like
exactly. So where I was going with this is like we still had to hire sort of your more traditional software engineering team and build that out. We had a PM, we had a designer, we had back-end and front-end engineers, full stack engineers. But that skill set is pretty hard and challenging to hire for in general. Like I think every startup struggles with that. I certainly struggled with that too. It's just really hard to find the right people to want to work at a startup and be able to work on the impactful work that we're doing. And there's so many opportunities and options for engineers, and so I think that was a challenge. And then you have the sort of team that was working more on the Foundry side, where you could actually bring in an engineer that maybe doesn't know how to do all of the end-to-end full stack development. Maybe they know how to do like one part of it. Maybe they can do the data and engineering work. Maybe they're more of an analytics individual, and you can power that individual to build out some of these workflows. And so I think we could hire individuals that were like smart, capable, analytical, data-driven, that could kind of build out a workflow without having the full engineering skill set that you would need to build out a full custom app. And so we hired both because we were doing both. Yeah. And I think over time, the goal was to continue to train internally people the skill set of using Foundry. I think we felt this was extremely painful. I think there aren't enough people out there that know how to use Foundry yet. I think it's getting a lot better. There's like the developer community. There's videos coming out around like how to do things, and then there's just more companies that are using it, and so that is making it easier to like find information about how to build in Foundry. But even 2-3 years ago when we made this decision and we were using it, there wasn't a lot, and so I think finding the skill set of people that are just like quick to learn, pick things up, was key, at least at the early stage.
I was going to ask you too, like, so if as you were thinking about it, but I think more importantly, if folks are in the startup context and are thinking about how do I hire up to build in Foundry, what are you looking for? How do you hire? Obviously, I think you and I have spoken separately and we have similar ideas on this, but I think
Yeah, I think like I said, the Foundry provides this. Makes you, if you're an engineer, it makes you more powerful as an engineer. But even if you're less technical, I think you can build out some workflows that are valuable to the business quickly. All of the AI features, the AIP features, they've integrated in the platform. This is true about a lot of products that are coming out of there where it's like AI assisted. So you can write pipeline code. You can ask AIP to basically write you an entire pipeline if you want. You may have to prompt it a few times, but if you have an individual that is, again, like I said, analytical, maybe they have some proficiency in SQL or some Python thing, they usually can get by in the platform and they can build out the workflows. And so I think if you're trying to, you have Foundry installed, what skill set you're looking for, I think finding a lot of those individuals will get you started. I do think it's really valuable to have one or two really more traditional, traditional software engineers that just know how to build software, because the reason why is that even when you're building in Foundry, you still want to apply the same software principles. You want to break down the sort of code in a certain way, and you want to encapsulate things in the right way. And I think someone that hasn't come from that background just doesn't know how to do that. But if you kind of partner that person with other people, they kind of learn how to do it, and then but you don't need to have 5 software engineers to build the thing, right? You can have one plus like a couple technical people, and they can get pretty far, I think.
Yeah. Well, and this, we obviously were talking about this as a team last night at dinner, but I think that one of the things that has been in my head about this is it democratizes the ability to build things, but it doesn't necessarily replace like some of the principles and like what is your operating model as a company, what do you care about, and what does quality software look like? Doesn't change a lot of that, and it still is equally important conversation, but it does mean that like honestly, someone coming from finance, at 24 like me who knew some SQL and was very good at Excel can do something reasonably useful in the platform. And that's honestly way different than when you and I were at Palantir, where I was a fraction of what I could do in the platform today was what we were doing on that project. So
yeah, with that, I mean, pre-Palantir Foundry, it was a lot of, I think in order to be successful in the forward deployed engineering role, you had to be strong technically. You didn't have a platform to lean on, so you were building a lot of the pipeline stuff from scratch. And we were leveraging open source stuff, but it did require a much higher technical bar to build that out. And you just didn't deliver as much value to the business because of it. So it's really
even
cool
with like a large number of people, right?
Yeah, I mean, with a project we work on, we had like 20 engineers.
It was a big project, yep.
And I would reflect on this a lot because that project had a modeling component, had an application component, had like obviously a huge data component to it, and a huge scale component. And again, we had like data scientists, software engineers, full stack.
I think my whole job was doing results of the model, like feedback, interpretation, sort of like analytical dashboarding, which I think you sort of get for free in the modeling tools.
Yeah, you get that for free. And then building the application we were building wasn't complex, but we didn't have anything to build on top of. You could definitely build that in Workshop today. The modeling, you can certainly build the models outside of Foundry. It doesn't have to be in Foundry, but operationalizing them and connecting them to the application is very easy in the platform. And then obviously all the pipelining works is like, that's table stakes. It's sort of built out. And so you could do, I'm like, I don't know exactly how many people you would need to do this project, but definitely like a few people, like 3. Like, I don't know, it's like pretty crazy to me that you could have this super ambitious project and be able to do it with so few people now.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think I want to go back to the sort of like having a couple of good engineers who sort of can hold the anchor of what does good look like is really important. One of the things that I think we've seen with some of our larger customers is that's a role that we get to play at Northslope, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. But it means that more folks who wouldn't traditionally have access to or have the skill set for being sort of deep data engineers or full stack engineers are able to do a lot of that stuff. In a startup context, I also think, and I'm curious for what you've seen both at Northslope and obviously in your previous stuff working with our startup customers and your own. I think there's also sort of like 2 archetypes of startups that we've started to work with. One is it is an engineering-led startup. It is a startup that is like, we are an engineering company and Foundry lets us go faster, do more. And in that context, like you put someone like 24-year-old me in the mix and all of a sudden you get to have all of the, I only wish someday we could build, this product that would let us do this operational thing, but our engineers are tied up doing this, like you can do that. The other that I'm excited about is there are a lot of like non-technical founders who are trying to get their V0 done. And there's an opportunity with Foundry to be able to go a lot farther, a lot faster with a much nimbler team and then be able to go hire the technical talent you actually need. So that's something that I've been thinking a lot about and starting to have those conversations, but curious what your opinion is on that.
I think it's a great articulation. I really resonate sort of the latter thing you said around like, I don't know if this thing's going to be the thing the market wants. I need to validate it. Traditionally, and certainly with like LLM-led coding nowadays, you could certainly have a less technical individual being able to write prototype code and like build that thing out. But I still think even then, you can get a lot of power out of Foundry to build a proof of concept, because it's not just like building the application. There's all of this other stuff that goes around it, whether it's like all the analytics that you're going to need to like understand the data. There's just so many other aspects of actually prototyping a end-to-end thing for a market to validate something in the market. That is not just building the custom app part. That part goes away. I think is getting easier and easier, and will certainly, I think, accelerate even faster as LLMs get better. But there's all the other stuff, like I said, that are kind of on the edges that you also need to build.
Especially since you can just go sign up for your own instance of Foundry and get started now. It makes it a lot easier. And one place that, this is a little bit of, this is what we do, so it's useful to talk about it. But I think a thing that also gets me excited is, because our whole thing is that we help take companies from where they are to being more self-sufficient or entirely self-sufficient operating in Foundry, with a sort of the non-technical founder case. I think the thing that resonates for me is, okay, great, if someone gets to work with you, who's a startup, and you can say, okay, great, you're building in Foundry, and also let's make sure that we actually set things up in a modular way with structured components, and we can actually, build in a way that is repeatable. You get a little of that in the door at the beginning and set that architecture up, and then people can get off to the races a lot faster.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's getting easier, Foundry still has stuff they're working on and building, especially in the kind of making things even better for developers. Recently, not recently, but in the past couple years, they added the OSDK so that you have an actual SDK to interface with the ontology and load data, write back data, run AIP functions and logic. That's allowing you to kind of build custom apps on top of it, which is great. I think the other thing that's sort of coming out is the ability to write, a component, like a plugin into like Workshop, for example, and so the more of those things that Palantir builds out, it makes this like calculus of being able to do 0 to 1 prototyping much easier especially for like maybe, if you're a CTO or you're an engineering lead and you're like, well, this isn't the exact platform I want to use long term, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe you're unsure, but it clearly that it's going to get you the 0 to 1 really fast. But if you have these things that are more modular, then the risk just goes out. It's like, why wouldn't you use the thing? It's like, do the thing, and then if you need to throw away that part of the platform, do it, right? I think what gets hard is like, if it's kind of a lock-in situation, I think there's a lot of fear, and rightly so, if you're using a single platform to do all the things, like, am I locked in and all these things? But if the more Foundry sort of modularized in the way that I described, or maybe you just use the OSDK and you write your custom app and you kind of have your own skin on top of it, like you can change whatever you're doing under the scenes, right? And so having that ability to architect your system with the intent of you're doing the 0-1, you're proving it out, and then now I want to scale and build the real thing. I think you have the optionality, and I think that's super important. We talk a lot about like, what are the doors I can go through that I can, is this a one-way door or not, right? And so the more non-one-way doors that you're able to go through, the better. And so I think this is very true in the technical world. Like, you want to, as much as possible, leave the optionality open. And so I think as a CTO, this was something certainly I was thinking about. And even back then, there was parts of Foundry that weren't quite there in the way that I wanted. And that was challenging, frankly, but it's gotten better to the point where, like, it's becoming more of a no-brainer for me for at least parts of like what I would want to build.
Yeah. Awesome. 2 more questions on this topic, and then I want to ask you a couple other things. First is in the Northslope context. Obviously, we work with some very large organizations, but we do, and we really like to do, work with startups and help them on this part of the journey. Yeah. Curious if there's an example of things you've seen work well when we've worked with those customers.
Yeah, I think one of the key pieces when you're working with the startup is, one thing is that the operating model of a startup and the operating model of Northslope like aligns pretty well, right? So it's which is really nice, because I think we really like, you give us a problem, but maybe like how we get to the solution, or maybe the actual scope of the thing is unclear, and we're trying to like figure that out together and iterate on that is something that is the right way to operate, and most startups operate.
And for what it's worth, honestly, like our best customers who are larger than startups, like this is the way it is as well, even if it's just a little pocket inside.
We often say like, there's a startup within a larger enterprise, exactly. And there's a reason for that. It's like culturally, there's that sort of alignment to iterate. So I think that aspect just makes it easy. I think to make it successful, one of the things is that, people are still learning about the platform, right? I think there's the expertise, especially, we come in with a lot more expertise usually than the startup has. Yeah. And so I think a lot of it at the beginning is kind of just education, frankly. Like, here's how we can build this thing, or here's how we can design this thing, and then do it together with people. Yeah.
There's like those do it once together, and now you do it on your own.
Exactly, and I think ideally, the most successful projects I've seen is there's someone on the customer side that is willing to invest in basically becoming a Foundry expert with us.
Yeah, and that's a nice segue to my last question on this, which is, obviously you've seen this from a bunch of angles, like product lead on the ontology at Palantir, as the CTO of a startup, and now at Northslope, like you've sort of seen this from a few different perspectives. If you were to say to a founder at a startup today, here's what you should be thinking about if you're going to work with Foundry as part of your technology stack, especially early, like say seed or Series A stage company, what are the pieces of advice that you think are most important for that founder?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one is just like, if you haven't used Foundry, I think give it a serious look, but I don't think you should just read the docs. I think you should build in it. Like, you can sign up for the platform now. This is something they recently allowed for and added this feature, I think, with this year, a few months ago. Yeah. You can just sign up for the platform. So there's no real excuse for you not to just like try a thing. And it doesn't have to
if you're not technical, like just get in there and
get
try
in
to do
there
something.
And build it. Yeah. And then I think you can kind of prove to yourself, like, is this going to be something I can use at a bare minimum, that sort of 0 to 1?
Yep.
And I'm not going to try. I wouldn't convince you to like, this is the platform I want to build my entire business on. I don't think you need to justify that decision when you're first starting, because you don't even know if you're going to have a business that is going to be successful yet. So like, what is the thing that's going to be the fastest to like test your hypothesis? But then you have the option to scale. Like, Foundry is used at some of the largest institutions in the world, and they're able to operate on it. So it at least gives you confidence they can do it. So like, I know I'm making a decision that allows me for it. It may not be the right technical flavor or choice for me as a CTO or, person that's the decision maker, and maybe you shift, but like, I think at least for that early stage, proving it out, and then you'll get your familiarity with the platform, see if it's the right fit for you. I think there's very few reasons to just like not get in your feet, get your hands and on keyboard and just do things.
Yeah. One of the things that I've also seen that is exciting about the platform for startups too is there's both the story of build your product on Foundry as a platform, and then there is also the power your operations for your startup on Foundry as a platform, especially if you have maybe in a hardware environment a lot of custom processes that are bespoke to the way that you are reinventing whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. And one of the exciting things to me too is that when you can do both, if you are a software product and you also have a bunch of operational things that you want to be able to spin up really quickly and do in a novel way, the value you get out of the platform is actually you get both for the same product, and that iteration speed is there to help your startup as well.
Yeah, and I think at the startup I worked at, we sort of kept it more for the operational platform, and that was valuable for some of the workflows. I think they just didn't have, I think Foundry didn't have some of the stuff they have now that makes it much easier to become like also powering some of the rest of your platform, where you have they have API access, but now with the SDK, you can actually much more easily integrate in a React app. Like, all of those features that are being added make it that much easier, not just to be an operational platform, but like an operational platform and power something like some custom thing you're trying to do as a business, or IP that you're trying to own as a business. You can now do that much better in Foundry than you could previously, and I know this is an area they're heavily investing in, so confident that that's only going to improve quarter over quarter.
To double down on what you were saying before, Palantir is invested in this and is really excited about seeing the next generation of companies built either on Foundry or in a Foundry context. And that also means that smaller companies, whether they're working with us or directly with Palantir or some combination of the two, there's a lot more support and resources now to help you along that journey and be able to actually make that real. One of my good friends, who's a former colleague from a couple of jobs ago, who's one of the most brilliant people I've met, awesome founder, really cool company. She knows a couple of Palantirians who were like, hey, you should try this thing, Foundry. And now they're using it to power all their operations at their startup. Awesome. And it was because she knew somebody. And that person said, well, let me help you get started. And I do think there's a little bit of a patient zero effect, and we still are in the world of patient zero where you need to find your patient zero. We can help jumpstart that. Palantir is doing a lot of work to help jumpstart that. Taylor at Ontologize and that team are trying to do a lot of work to help jumpstart that, which is awesome. But this is a really good time for it. And also, there still is a patient zero thing where you need a little bit of activation energy, but a little bit of activation energy really goes a long way to get you and your team off and going.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was skeptical of, okay, I built part of the platform, so why I'm probably not the best person to be like, yeah, anyone can learn how to use this thing, right? And when we were first deploying Foundry at our startup, I wasn't sure, how this was going to play out. Yeah. We had one engineer in particular that really took to Foundry, had done some like data manipulation or analysis type stuff previously, and so had that background, and we started to work together, building out workflows, building out pipelines, building out the ontology. And I think once she kind of worked through a couple work flows with me, became self-sufficient. Yeah. And it wasn't like a couple weeks, it took months of working together, but it kind of proved to me that if you have someone that knows how the platform works and you're sort of teaching others, like definitely can be something that people pick up. So I guess what I'm trying to say in summary is that, if you get started, maybe you need help, like bring in someone like us or bring in an expert or bring in someone that's used the platform. To just to get bootstrapped and get started. Yeah. But like it is something that everyone can like learn and use and become super effective in. And again, you kind of made a really good call out, which is like, you don't have to be a software engineer to use the platform. Like if you're someone that just wants to build, you can build a workflow. And I think it really does democratize that piece for people to use.
Cool. All right, last lightning round, because I think we're getting close to time. What's the future of the Foundry ecosystem? Like, where does this go in 20 years in your mind? Maybe bull case, bear case kind of a thing.
I mean, this is great. I'd love for you to answer this question totally. Too. I think bull case.
Almost built a business around the bull case, so
Bull case, I think, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna. Something that I haven't seen, there's signs of this right now with like Skywise, right? Where you have an industry-wide platform where there's data sharing and applications being built on top of that data, and it is fundamentally changing industries. I think in both cases we see more of that, where the finance industry or all of these industries, there's a lot of siloing of data and more collaboration in a secure and managed way. Is going to enable some workflows we can't even think of. There's these ideas that I don't think you and I can even think about right now that are going to be enabled. And Foundry is going to be the platform that enables those platforms. Yeah, there's X platform in AWS or GCP that do data analysis and these things, but no one is like building industry level platforms, right? Yep. And I think that is, they're almost like secretly doing this. Like I don't think people realize this is what Foundry is powering and what people that are close to Foundry and Palantir see it, but like the industry, I don't think have caught up on this idea or this concept. So bull case, it's that, and then I think there's another version of that, which is like if these are powering industries, and Foundry becomes this thing that Palantir wants, which is this like platform where everyone can build on top, like applications on top of, and there's a marketplace, then it becomes like the largest like business application marketplace that isn't just like random widgets, but they're widgets that are actually making a difference in industries.
Yeah, completely agree.
So that is like the bull case. Bear case, I think the platform still has a place in the world. Like I still think it's
hard to see it dying.
It's hard for me to see it die. Yeah. I think it's hard to see it like completely go away. They may if it stays kind of status quo of like a thing that some places use and other places don't, like it may flounder a bit, but I don't see it going away because it is this like one-stop shop platform you can do to build applications for your enterprise, and like there's not a ton of other companies who are doing that. I think that they're always going to be businesses that need the thing that they're providing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I want to go back to what you said in the original bull case around the Skywise thing, because that's mine too, where there are so many, well, I think definitely a perspective I have, and I've heard articulated probably better than I'm about to, is there are lots of ways in which we could solve some of our big intractable societal problems, but the nature of the way we are competing against those problems makes it difficult to get the right incentive structures and pool resources to solve it. And one of the cool things about Skywise, and also some of the collaboration work I did in government with both sort of like government and non-governmental actors when I was at Palantir, is really, really exciting for finding the right way to both share data securely in a way that protects people's IP and business processes, but also helps align the incentives where we can actually go tackle things together and grow the pie, make things better together. And one of the early signs of that for me that gets me really excited is at Northslope, in our first year of existence, we're working with 2 different customers that are building those products for their industries, one in energy, one in manufacturing, and that we didn't sell that vision. We went to them and said, how can we help? And they said, we're trying to transform our industry by building this type of product that allows us to do exactly that type of data sharing that makes the end product for the end customer better and allows that industry to collaborate in a way that traditionally they'd just be competing against each other. So I think there's a big thing around the Skywise thing for me.
Yeah, I haven't seen, I've seen other platforms have low code, no code, application building. I've seen platforms do the analytics. I've seen the platforms that are like high scale databases. It's, there's components of what of each of these things in other platforms, and use that thing. Yep. But this thing around being able to share data securely and collaborate industry wide is no one's doing that. Yeah. I think, and so I think it's, and I think people don't understand the value, like the number of new use cases that will come out of that.
Totally.
Is going to be huge.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for doing the inaugural one and being the guinea pig. And hopefully we'll get some folks who are not just Northslope people, but also customers on here eventually soon. And this was a great kickoff. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Cool. Awesome.